Hey, and welcome to Make It Conscious. My name is Max, and this episode is all about psychological adulthood. Going to be talking about what that means, understanding if you are a psychological adult. I hope you are, because if you're watching this, then you probably are an adult. Most of my viewers are. Most of my viewers are older than 35. So maybe that explains why I don't get as many comments as other videos. Maybe my audience doesn't feel the need to comment as much, and that's totally understandable. It does help the algorithm, apparently. So if you wish to comment, feel free. Don't feel you have to shy away. But if you don't feel you want to comment, then don't. You know, you're a free being. You can do whatever you like. I'm not going to try and pressure you one way or the other. I'm here to honor your freedom, and I appreciate you honoring mine and letting me share this. This is all good fun. So, right, psychological adulthood. What does this mean? This is a really important concept to understand. This is quite distinct from biological adulthood, as I have alluded to. And it's very important when we understand the shadow map and Jungian psychology, and more broadly, just the movement of mind itself, like what's happening in our world and what it is that needs to happen next. If this whole self-knowledge journey is to continue in the way it's going, what does this actually mean? To start this off, I first want to share some thoughts on a tarot card. So for those of you watching on video, I've displayed a picture of the Fool. This is Major Arcanum 0. It's technically number 22, but it's marked by the sigil of 0. And it is both the first and the last card in the Major Arcana. So what this means is it's the journey of spirit, the journey of mind, the path of the Fool, starts and ends with the Fool. And not only is the Fool the start and the end of the journey, but he is also the character that walks the path. Now, we could talk for hours and days maybe just on this one symbol, maybe any of the symbols, but there's something particularly, I think, pertinent here, because this card perhaps captures the inherent nature of mind more than any other. It's designed especially for that purpose, being both the start and the end. So how can it be both the start and the end? Well, because it represents both potential and the destination at the same time, the means and the ends. And so let's actually look at the card and try and decipher what that could actually mean. Well, a number of things, and some I want to focus on especially here, about the nature of spiritual development. This Fool, most strikingly, just appears very light, doesn't he? Very easygoing. He's not bothered by anything. And is that a question of his naivety or his wisdom, or both? At the start of the journey, he might just look like a straight up simple fool. Doesn't know anything. He's about to walk off a cliff, and presumably he's going to hurt himself. But at the same time, he appears to be standing on quite a high spot already. So he's already ventured out. He's already on a journey. He's carrying a satchel. He's possibly quite unprepared. And so there's deep, deep wisdom in this card, because the Fool is actually kind of wise in a way. As William Blake said, a fool who persists in his folly will become wise. And so this early stage naivete, this blissful ignorance even, actually might be a clue that it's actually closer to spirit in some sense. Now, it leads to all kinds of problems. We discussed a couple of episodes ago about applying tarot to the shadow map, and how the Fool especially can, yes, signify originality and freedom, but also recklessness and heedlessness and risk-taking. But it's precisely through the Fool's journey that he comes to know himself. And what does he know himself to be? Well, in the end, he's a fool, right? But is that a bad thing? Well, he seems pretty happy. He seems like I say, he's taking life very easily. And so there's great wisdom in his lightness. And if we think about what a lot of traditions teach, or the aim of many spiritual traditions, is like this, a kind of spiritual exaltation of some kind, where they call it individuation, or whether they call it enlightenment, right? This like freedom from all problems. Well, there's immediately, as we know from the shadow map, there's a self-contradiction in that, because if you want to be free from all problems, you create problems. Freedom from all problems might just be part of the shadow position. It's judging some part of reality as bad and another aspect of reality as good. Like, problems are bad. We don't want problems. Obviously, problems, by definition, are kind of bad. But from some other perspective, perhaps from the Fool's perspective, perhaps from Spirit's perspective, do we not need problems? I mean, Jung said that man needs struggle. Struggle is good for health. So it's from some perspective, sure, they seem like a problem. They seem bad even. But actually, they can also be seen as a challenge. And so there's one take, which is just, okay, we want to solve the problem of life. We want to make ourselves better than life, better than the world around us. We want to transcend this disgusting world, be better than other people. This immediately breaks down when you start studying idealist philosophy. You start reading the works of people like Schelling and Hegel. This is just another power position. This is just another conscious thesis. It's bifurcating reality and saying this bit good, this bit bad. Don't want this bit. You can't have this bit without this bit. It's dead simple. So what does that mean for the Fool? What's this other kind of exaltation, let's say, this kind of spiritual state? Well, the Fool is both the means and the ends. And so in the end, he realizes he's just a fool, right? And he's going about his daily life and he's not taking it too seriously. Maybe he is taking it seriously, but that's also part of the fun. So, he's not judging himself for taking it seriously. And what else you notice, something that really jumped out to me with this card, is that he's kind of contradictory, if that's not already super transparent for what I've been saying. Everything about him is contradictory, right? He's about to fall off a cliff, and yet he doesn't seem to mind or doesn't seem to know. He's a fool, but he's also wise. He's on a journey, completely underprepared, and doesn't seem to have any problem with that. At the same time, he is completely non-contradictory. He is exactly where he needs to be. He might be the only place he can be. He is both free and limited. He is enjoying the fact that he has total freedom. And while at the same time, everything is precisely the only way it possibly can be. Figure that out. Everything is the only way it can be and simultaneously completely free. That's what freedom is, because you don't have freedom without limitation. Limitation is created through acts of freedom. So he's encapsulating everything here. And I'm going to go ahead and share this point. I don't know if this has been discussed before in discussions of the Fool card from the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, but I couldn't help but notice that he has 7 points on his belt. Now, some people might say this is the 7 original planets, but also if you remember that the Fool is card number 22. And the other thing you'll notice is that the belt is about halfway across his body. He has an upper half and a lower half. It's also positioned about halfway up the card as well. So what happens if you take 22 and divide it by 7? You get pi, 3.142, etc. You get the relationship of the line to the circle, or even the relationship of the individual to the whole, perhaps. Is there something in this here that's hinting to a deeper meaning of this card? The circle being the perfect shape, being completely non-contradictory. There's no imperfections in a circle. That's why it's impossible to draw one. So, and not only the circle, but the relationship of the 7 to the circle, of the line that moves through this shape. 7 is also often associated with individuality as a number. And there's other reasons for that as well. So, how about we just forget about enlightenment, right? Let's focus on becoming adults first. How about that? Because firstly, what does it mean to be an adult? What does it mean to be a psychological adult? Well, what does it mean to be a biological adult? We know they're not the same thing. But what biological adulthood means, I suppose you can make the case that it's a kind of biological independence, in a sense. Like there's a kind of wholeness to biological adulthood. That you become an individual that has the ability to procreate, which means that you can meet with another individual and share your DNA and create something that didn't exist before. You can create a new being out of literally a merging of your DNA. So there's a kind of independence biologically there. a kind of individuality. So I think we can draw a comparison actually to psychological adulthood as well. What could it possibly mean to be psychologically independent in that way? Well, I'm going to make the case that it has to do with a number of things that are more or less captured in this idea of taking responsibility for your mind, understanding the nature of your mind, understanding that there is a journey, there is a path, that there is a fool that's walking the path, and that what you encounter in the world is not necessarily all caused by you, but you are experiencing it through the lens of your own mind. That's key. And sometimes the answer is to deal with your own mind. It's certainly to understand what it means about your own mind. And sometimes the answer is to deal with something in the world. And knowing the difference is pretty important, pretty key. And so the opposite would be codependency or something like that, or would be not taking responsibility for your mind, right? It would be assuming that my senses just conform to an objective sensory world. Sounds quite materialistic, right? And that everything's kind of happening to me. And the way that I need to confront that is nothing but pure adaptation. I need to exert power in order to get control over these troubling, terrifying forces of the unknown. That's the only way to deal with things, right? That's the psychologically immature attitude. It's just to think that, yeah, I'm just this thing walking around in the world and I need to dominate it in order to not experience pain. Like the whole point of life is just to avoid challenge. Right? This is the opposite of the fool's attitude. So you can hopefully see a pretty clear alignment there. So let's actually discuss what this might consist of, what this might look like in greater detail. So I think of it as being a kind of upgrade to our psychic operating system. It's a completely different paradigm. And for those watching the video, again, I've illustrated this with an image of a woman who looks like she has the world in her head. And so this is a kind of metaphor for understanding that our minds are displaying us a rendering of the world. And when we encounter an individual, or encounter a feeling, when we draw meaning from a situation, when we look up at the sky, when we see planets, when we see stars, we are also seeing something that our own mind is rendering to us. It reminds me of another quote by Jung where he talked about how the signs of the zodiac are nothing less than projections of the collective unconscious. So the apparently chaotic formations of the stars, although we can dispute whether they really are chaotic or whether there's some involvement there. But anyway, we see things in the stars. It's like when you look at a cloud or a Rorschach test or even a tarot reading. Our mind has a role in what appears, and certainly in what we see and what we take from it. And so it's really key about understanding that. And so hanging off of that as well is very simply that there is such thing as an unconscious mind. There's this whole other part of reality. It's implicit, and it shows up in all manner of different ways. So it exists and it plays a really key role. And actually, our engagement with it defines our success in the sense of coming to know ourselves. Now, we have all manner of ideas around success in today's world. We might think that success is just getting as much power as possible, having as much power over these pesky unknown forces as possible. Success might be being the perfect mother. But of course, all that means is fulfilling our perfect idea of what motherhood might be. It's not the real thing. It's not the same thing. We might think that success is being incredibly disciplined, no matter what. Like you see some fitness influencers now who just their whole brand is like, I can work harder than anyone else. It's quite sad in a lot of ways because it's really coming from a place of self-loathing. It's, I'm going to be the most powerful, disciplined, rigid, structured person there is. Completely neglecting the virtues of flexibility and the incredible relief that will come when they finally not only choose to embrace that, but when their body and mind finally forces it, this inexorable encounter with necessity that must come eventually. This is why we get injured, this is why we get sick. And the answer to that is not necessarily to paste over it with painkillers and various other kinds of drugs. It might be that it contains a message for us, value for us. So understanding that there is such thing as an unconscious and it has a key role in our lives, our direction, and our development. And that engaging with it is key to our growth and what it really means to be who we are. And we might have all kinds of ideas about that, but unless we've encountered the deeper aspects of ourselves, we consciously cannot meaningfully say what progress or success or any of this stuff really is for us. We might know what the next step is. We might know what we want, but we might not know why we want what we want or what it is that meaningfully represents for us. Like, we might think we want that car, that house, that spouse. What is it we really want underneath all that? And until we explore and engage, we cannot say. So the role of will and the mind in creating reality is another one. So this is moving beyond a purely materialist paradigm. It's not to say that there isn't value in materialism, and neither is it to say that we're just creating everything with our own mind. It's not even necessarily saying that you have to go and read Hegel's phenomenology. No, it's not a prerequisite for reaching psychological adulthood. But having some sense, and if anything, it's about the openness to it and being willing to see the evidence of it in your own life. It's not about ascribing a model to the system and saying, okay, now that I'm this religion, I now need to see that everywhere. Or now that I've bought a Toyota car, I'm now going to see Toyota cars everywhere. No, it's just being open to the role of your mind. I think if you can be sensitive to that, you'll reach your own conclusions. That's it. And the existence of a path at all. That this is a journey. There is no single endpoint. Some professionals in mental health talk about a journey mindset versus a destination mindset, and that actually the journey mindset is much more fruitful and better captures reality, because after all, the ancients knew that it starts with the fall and ends with the fall. So we're talking ancient wisdom here. Okay, there's more. Okay, this one's interesting. An appreciation of the truth and utility of symbolism. Now, to deny the usefulness of symbolism would be essentially to deny the existence of an unconscious mind. A symbol is simply an image that connects the conscious to the unconscious. The word derives from a number of Greek words, but for example, symboline, which means to throw together. So a symbol is literally like that which bridges two things together, like something above and something below. And the symbol is the mind's best possible way of communicating in terms of what the conscious mind knows and what the actual thing is. This is why symbols are so valuable and powerful. We need them. This is one of the key ways in which we learn about ourselves. Our minds are doing this all the time. They're always encountering themselves through experience. But a symbol is a very pure way of doing that. And that's why, for example, there are better and worse kinds of tarot deck. There's tarot decks that have great symbolic integrity, and there's those that basically just violate that completely, and maybe they even change the number of cards. They don't adhere to the structure of the tarot. There's certain reasons why the tarot has 78 cards and why it has 22 major arcana, 40 minor arcana, 16 core cards, and so on. So as soon as you start changing some of these things, it's no longer pure. And so whilst there's symbolism everywhere, there's varying degrees of usefulness and meaning to what we experience in the world. So a deep respect for nature. This is a very simple one, and in terms of a very practical observation and tip here, one of the simplest things you can do to improve your state of mind, especially in this modern urbanized world, is just to get out of there, get out into nature, take a few days off, go to the countryside, and just get away from the cities. And by the same token, if you want to encounter immoral, unwholesome, neurotic, vicious, hurtful, malicious, abusive and bullying behaviour, well, it's easy. Just go into any city in the Western world and you'll find it. Not everyone's doing it all the time necessarily, but the chances of you seeing depravity and unwholesomeness when you walk into a typical city is 100%. It's the most easy way to encounter abuse and self-contradiction in the world. Either that or to, open up certain social media platforms and scan, right? It's the other way of doing it. But the existentialists were big on this as well. This Umwelt, the around world, this connection to nature, is one of the three primary worlds that we have to have a relationship with. And simply put, we go mad when we don't have nature around. So if you spend your entire life in a city, there's something seriously missing there. It's very important to not only experience nature, but to respect nature, because we are nature. We come from nature, and for the same reason that doing evil things ultimately creates our own downfall, and betray ourselves in doing that. Not honouring nature is another way of doing that. So also I've said here, breaking the trap and illusion of left brain dominance. Now this is a deep subject, but simply put, the left brain acts as, well, I think about it as like it's taking snapshots. It's storing things in a very isolated and particular way. So if you imagine on the shadow map, you've got the power position and the shadow position. These are very particular. They have an image. They're associated with like a certain way of doing things, a certain style of doing things. They're split off by virtue of the fact that something has been taken to its, not necessarily its maximum development, but a high degree of development, and other things have been left out by the same token. And so when we want to be a certain way, whether it's our persona, whether it's showing up as, let's say very spiritual, right? This is something you see all over the place, right? Instagram, YouTube. It's performative spirituality. It's the most ironic thing, because spirituality is the connection to the self, right? It's understanding that we is more than what we think we is, or at least that meets us, meets the eye, and that there's a whole journey here of associating with that which is beyond the immediate conscious ego, and that we do well to engage with and deepen a relationship to that and the various facets of it, the archetypes, however you want to think about it. And so it is most ironic, therefore, that the temptation might be to, okay, well, if you just do things this way, I'm just going to wear the right beads, wear the right color of clothes, say the right things in the right way, follow these rules, make sure that I'm getting that recognition from the external world that reflects back to me that I am spiritual. And then I can, do away with any need to actually engage with my own inner content and attain genuine sovereignty. So ultimately it's about developing your own individuated self, and that means becoming non-contradictory in yourself. That's what it means. Becoming completely at harmony with what you is, in essence, and in existence. But if we just focus on appearances, then by default, it's no longer the real thing. It's just a simulacra or a semblance of it. And so it's one thing to act fair, but actually violate true fairness in the process. It's one thing to act like you're thinking rationally, but actually violate truth in the process. But it's a whole other level of irony to act spiritual, because there's a contradiction in terms. There is no acting in spirituality, not at least in its full expression. There might be the need to hang out with certain ideas along the way. Of course there is. This is the journey. But they must always be vehicles to a self-realization. So, moving back to the slides now. So yeah, this idea of opening up to experience and the balance of hemispheres. So a lot of materialist thought is very, very left brain centric, and we need the left brain. There's nothing wrong with the left brain, but there's a need to open up to the right brain, to possibility, to openness, to newness, to connection with the unknown, and then making sense of it through the lens of what we know, sure, but there has to be this continual engagement, and it's not enough either just to be right brain focused. There has to be an honouring of both sides. There's just duality at every stage here. So these are all various features of what psychological adulthood involves. And a key takeaway here is that if, as an individual, if you're doing this, if you're understanding these things, that's great. In terms of like a bar to set, and I don't like to talk in terms of what society should do, because society is just a collection of individuals, right? And whatever you choose to do, it's what you choose to do that will make a difference for you, right? So it's your inner work. You cannot change the world. You cannot make other people do their own inner work, because that too is a contradiction in terms. Because if you were trying to make them do it, then it's no longer their inner work, and they will no longer attain any realization through it. The very fact that it is a journey of self-knowledge means that you cannot do it for someone else. Therefore, this is why to focus on your own development of self-knowledge. But if you understand this idea of psychological adulthood, you can use that to navigate in the world. You can use that to discern and to understand more about what you encounter in the world. You can understand more about why people behave the way they do, where they're coming from psychologically. Are they understanding that their mind is playing a role in what they experience? And beyond that, are they actually setting a good intention to work with that as it is? Are they meeting you as a fellow human being? And this is key. Are they appreciating the fact that there's a duality here and there's a path and that you both exist and you're both on a self-knowledge journey? Because if they are, then they'll be honoring your freedom and you'll be honoring their freedom. And that's fundamentally what's needed for a relationship to occur. Doesn't matter what star sign you are, doesn't matter what your interests are, it doesn't matter what your Myers-Briggs personality type is, it doesn't matter what your political views are. You can disagree all day, every day, and you can still be friends because both of you respect each other's freedom. Both of you honor the other's autonomy and recognize that that means you yourself must have an unconscious. There must be more for you to learn and understand. So, here's a phrase I haven't used for a little while: master-slave dynamic. Neither of you is trying to drag the other into a master-slave dynamic because you're psychological adults. So you're not seeking power for its own sake over the other person. You're not trying to plunder their recognition, their capacity for self-knowledge, and have them project that onto you. You're not trying to deceive them into that process. Confabulate some rationalization around how, oh, well, they chose to do it. Yeah, but if you deceive them into doing that, if you act the way and you tell them implicitly or explicitly that you're carrying something that really belongs to them, then you've deceived them and you've violated their freedom. There's no two ways about it. You have tried to drag them into a master-slave dynamic. So it's really this understanding on which this is based. And if you value your own freedom, which we all do, but if you value your own freedom, then the only way you can really attain that is if you do not violate your own freedom. It's one thing to be free, but if you be free at the expense of someone else, as Hegel labored to point out, sooner or later you just end up violating your own journey as well. So I'm going to read a couple of quotes from Jung just as we wrap up here, from Archetypes of the Collective Unconscious. He said, "We still forget, like children, what happened yesterday. We are still living in a wonderful new world where man thinks of himself astonishingly new and modern. This is unmistakable proof of our youthfulness of human consciousness, which has not yet grown aware of its historical antecedents." So here he is corroborating something I said, or sort of insinuated around psychological adulthood. And it's kind of interesting. You look at culture as it is today, and it's quite youthful, right? We're at a very youthful stage. And it's been quite a while since Jung wrote this. I'd say it's moved beyond, and it's more into sort of that stage we all have in our own lives where we go forth, we make something happen, we do something. We realize for the first time that we can create something. Maybe this is when we're in our teenage years and we're practicing some skill. We realize that, oh wow, I can practice and actually get better at this thing, playing the guitar or DJing or cooking or whatever it is. And not only that, I can get recognition for that. Wow, imagine that. This is something that I've done through my own will. And that takes on a new form when we go out into the world of work, potentially, or maybe even education at some point. We really start to learn that we can actually leverage our own God-given will and build a life for ourselves. It's very exhilarating when you first realize this. It sounds maybe kind of simple to most people listening to this because most of you are quite a bit older, but remember back to that first time when that's quite a breakthrough, when you realize that, wow, I can actually craft my own existence, my own life. A baby can't do that. A child can't do that to a very, very rudimentary extent. It can basically complain and lobby its parents to buy a toy or something. But this independent self-creation, and so it's kind of natural that that would go off the rails almost immediately in all manner of ways, like the fall, right? Falling off a cliff. But if you think like materialism itself carries some of that energy. In spiral dynamics terms, this would be the orange meme, right? I mean, it straddles many memes, but the idea that we can create the good life right knowledge. We can just build things. We can just figure out chemistry. We can create energy for ourselves. We can drive around. Brilliant, wonderful. What could go wrong? If we just keep doing more and more and more of that, then everything will be great forever. We'll have all our needs met. He said there's a kind of youthfulness in that. It's this sort of like blissful naivety of like, oh, nothing will ever go wrong. We've figured it out now. It's like that sweet spot between knowing that you can craft your own existence and having not really met even the very first consequence, having not yet brushed up against even the first meeting with your own hubris, the dark side of your own expansion. So Jung is saying the same thing here, really. The modern man thinks of himself as new and modern, like we've got it all together. And the answer to that is quite simple. It's to encounter the shadow. It's to meet with the very opposite that we create. What Hegel would refer as well, the negation is the internal negation of that very movement, the self-contradictory element. But then also there's the external forces as well, the externalities that come about. Right? This might be ecocide, destruction of the environment. This is the externally generated results of one-sided production. But there's also the internally generated part, which is well, I thought we were doing a good thing here. I thought we were making people's lives better, and we did that for 50, 70 years, but there was diminishing returns there, and suddenly, not only are we not getting the same amount of good from it anymore, we're actually creating a great deal of bad that we didn't anticipate. Right? This is internal negation. This is very Hegelian stuff, but it's like we've fallen in love with the idea, cheating on the real thing. So let's go to another quote from Jung just to finish up here. He said, "But it is precisely those who give least credence to the autonomy of the unconscious who are most surprised by it. Because of its youthfulness and vulnerability, our consciousness tends to make light of the unconscious. This is understandable enough, for a young man should not let himself be overawed by the authority of his parents if he wants to start something on his own account." I'm going to leave that there. Hope you found that useful. Hope you found that enjoyable. Please leave me a like if you have enjoyed it. Feel free to check out the Know Yourself program as well, knowyourself.makeitconscious.com. It's my self-study program. So with that, I will again thank you and see you in the next one.